Hello and welcome, everybody. Beautiful souls that are joining us today in Ashram Talks. This is Atul Krishna Das, and I'm going to be your host for today. In this occasion, we are with the wonderful Haripriya. Haripriya, hello, Hare Krishna. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad that you're here too.
Shall I just begin? Okay, here we go. Okay. Om Jnana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So that's just our invocation to ask for guidance from our teachers and realizations and blessings from our teachers um, as we all are on the path and wanting to open that channel to receive divine knowledge. So today we're at the end of chapter 3, which is it's a pretty big deal. It's like the conclusion of karma yoga. So we have the last two verses, and I'm going to dive in. And so I read from Bhagavad Gita as it is, and there's different verses, there's different covers, but as it is, those words means that Srila Prabhupada, the author, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he didn't change the ancient, what was ancient thousands of years ago, and what we read is in the text. And then what he did is he elaborated his own words. Hello, Colleen. Thank you for your patience this morning. We're in different countries here. You know, our hosts and our speakers are all around the world. So the whole daylight savings also changed some things for us today. So thank you for being here, and it's nice to see you. So Srila Prabhupada wrote in his purports what he wanted to share, his expansion and elaboration of the ancient text. So I'm going to actually read quite a lot of the purports as well today. I just think it's so appropriate. So usually we go right to the text and then I elaborate, but actually I really want to kind of use Srila Prabhupada's purport to go deeper. So here we are in verse 42. The working senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is higher than the senses. The intelligence is still higher than the mind. And the soul is even higher than the intelligence. So it seems really clear, but we get lost in our thoughts and in our minds daily. Our mind tells us something and we just go for it. And we don't stop and pull back and use our intelligence to direct the mind. And then even further than that, pull back and use our consciousness, our soul, that what is our position? What is our nature? What is our, I'll call it like inclinations. So if we come from that space of like, who am I? Like, imagine if every morning we actually stop and dropped into like awareness of who I am as a soul, who I am as a conscious entity within this body, and what is going to serve this conscious entity, and what's going to satisfy me, the actual me within this body. And then from that place, from that consciousness, we direct our intelligence to direct our mind, that thus directs our actions and our senses, right? So a lot of times we get kind of just, we wake up and we're just, whatever our mind starts going, our thoughts go, and we just go with it. And sometimes we're using our intelligence. Like we wake up and we have a plan. We're supposed to do this service or that job or this task, and we go. But it's rare, I'd say, at least in my life, that I wake up and I pause and I say, oh, I'm a soul. I'm a soul within this body, and I want my soul to be the source of the direction of my day. Because a lot of times we're like, well, what does that look like? What does that mean? It would take more awareness and more like studying the Bhagavad Gita or spending time with what we call sadhus, people who are practitioners that have realizations, that are realized souls, sadhus that are doing their what's called sadhana, right? Their practice of connecting to the divine. So I'm going to read the purport now, but I think that's what I'm opening up with, is that even in reading this text, it inspires me that I want to do this. I want to start every day aligning the direction of my day with the soul's knowledge. Like, okay, from a soul's perspective, that what's my real trajectory and what are my real goals, right? In the last class, I had this idea of like asking you to sit and ask yourself, what do you want? Like from a soul place, what do you want? What does the soul want? So it's the same kind of idea. If we can get clarity on what we really want, like if we want to have high consciousness, or we want love, we want real love of God, we want to know God personally, we want to feel God in our life, we want to feel connected to God, we want to have like a loving intimate relationship where we know he knows us, and we know that he has our back, and we know that what we're offering is giving him pleasure and happiness, because that's what relationships are all about, right? Like I had a little birthday gathering yesterday with some beautiful women, and it was just in being together, there's enjoyment. Just in offering a gift, there's enjoyment. Just in speaking sweet words, there's enjoyment. So usually what happens is we go backwards. Here it says the senses, then the mind, then the intelligence. So usually we're seeking that enjoyment through our senses. It's not the soul enjoying, right? So to seek enjoyment is natural. To seek enjoyment is where we are souls that want to have a happy, enjoyable life. So I think what happens when we come to spiritual life, we learn the nuances. What is the soul enjoying? What's the mind enjoying? What's the intelligence enjoying? And what are the senses enjoying? And when we're not engaging our soul in its true calling and the true enjoyment of a loving, connected, deep, real, authentic, honest relationship with our source, then we're naturally going to get lost into what the mind wants and what the senses want, and that's where we're going. So I'm going to read Srila Prabhupada's purport, because that's also where he goes here. So the senses are different outlets for the activities of lust, and lust we'll call when you're letting the senses enjoy. That's it. When it's not connected to the soul, it's simply like I'm enjoying through my tongue, or I'm enjoying through, sex, or I'm enjoying through watching something, or I'm enjoying through touch. So it's just the senses. It's like the senses are running us, and the mind is figuring out a way to get the senses what they want, and even the intelligence is figuring out a way to get the mind what it wants and the senses what they want, right? So it's like we're letting the body run the show. We're letting the false identity run the show instead of the soul, the real identity, the real ego, the real self run the show. So here Srila Prabhupada is saying lust, and that word lust we elaborated a little bit, but it's ultimately when we're letting the body run the show, and we're misidentifying. So lust is reserved within the body. Srila Prabhupada continues, lust is reserved within the body, but it is given vent, expression, through the senses. Therefore, the senses are superior to the body as a whole. These outlets are not in use when there's superior consciousness or Krishna consciousness. It means when we're awake to our God consciousness, then we're not just giving outlet to the senses. In Krishna consciousness, the soul makes direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now I'm just going to pause there. That is amazing. That is what the entire book is about, right? Making direct connection with someone who is unimaginably loving, unimaginably kind and gentle and handsome and funny and cheeky and intelligent and wise and deep. And it's like, if we really knew Krishna, we would want nothing else. We would want nothing else but to spend time with that person. We would want to have like I had a tea party with my girlfriends yesterday. We would want to have a tea party only with him, obviously, and his associates and those that love him. And so that's the spiritual world. That is the spiritual world, when you are so loving and so absorbed in this personality that you want to give, right? Like yesterday, they wanted to give me something, offer me something. Our soul naturally wants to give. We can call it service. Some people love the word service. Some people have an inimical relationship with the word service, or a negative relationship with the word service. So I like to use words like love and give, because whatever, one thing is semantics. And so the word service, it encompasses so much. And I've said this before, that seva, the word seva is what we translate as service. But service doesn't encompass nectar, deliciousness. Whereas the word seva, that it's coming from the ancient text that says seva, and we translate it as service, the word seva means delicious, like, oh, so enjoyable. So when we say we're the servants of God, sometimes people feel like, yeah, and they have the purity to go, yeah, I totally identify with that. I, most of my life, did not have the purity to identify with that. I questioned it, like, am I a servant? And what does the servant mean? And I could even ask questions like, am I just a servant? Right? And that's my mind and my ego coming in and trying to understand something that's deeper and spiritual. And what I've come to, that what serves me, right? There's the word serve. What serves me is to let go of the word service because it doesn't inspire me. For whatever reason, that word, that semantic word, it doesn't inspire me. But lover of God, giver to God, someone fully absorbed in God, all of that inspires me, which essentially is the same thing, because if I love God and I am absorbed in thoughts of God and wanting to give sweet words to God, like singing to him or glorifying him or reading about him, that's the same thing. I'm serving. Just like yesterday, people spoke sweet words about me and it was enjoyable. So when we speak sweet words about God, he enjoys it. It's enjoyable. It's a service to him. But again, it's a seva. I'll use the word, it's a seva, because that inspires me more, because it means delicious service. So I just want to share, because sometimes in religion or spirituality, it gets dry. And I think it gets dry because we don't understand the depth of the word, or we're using a word that we feel disconnected to. So I invite you to find what is authentic and authentically inspiring to you, because otherwise it's dogmatic. It's like I read something and I'm supposed to be like this and I'm going to be like a robot. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel inspiring, but I'm going to just push myself to do it. It's not going to have much longevity, right? There's a time and a place to do things that we don't want to do. I'm not at all saying we should only do what we desire, because the senses and the mind are going to lead us in ways that aren't good for us. And so there's definitely a place to ignore, what the mind wants. And the best is making the mind a friend, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, it said the mind can be your best friend or your worst enemy. So I don't want to fight with where I really am. So I want to accept where I am. And for me, if the word service doesn't inspire me, I want to find a word that does inspire me, that essentially means the same thing. So when I wake up and I want to connect to, I want to be a lover of God today. I want to act like it's God's birthday, right? All those ladies woke up thinking, what can I give Haripriya? And I want to wake up thinking, well, today's God's birthday, because every day is in that consciousness. And so, like, what can I give God today? Today's his birthday. At least I'm going to put myself in that mood, right? Because we're used to that. We know what that looks like. Oh, it's my good friend's birthday. Maybe I'll bake them a cake, or maybe I'll, write them poetry, or I'll bring them flowers, or right. So it's like, yeah, let's do that. Let's bake God a cake and give him flowers and write him poetry. So I'll continue. But he says, direct connection with the Supreme. So I guess I just want to invite us to really chew on that. Like, that is possible every single moment if we wanted it. We can have direct connection with God through his sound vibration, through his name. And that's like a whole other class, which, is not where I'm going. So I'm excited to elaborate on this purport, that in Krishna consciousness, the soul, who we really are, makes direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We make direct connection with someone who spins planets in orbit. Like, if we could only really understand, it would be easy. Spiritual life would be like drinking water. Therefore, the bodily functions, as described here, ultimately end in the Supreme Soul. Bodily action means the function of the senses, and stopping the senses means stopping all bodily actions. But since the mind is active, then even though the body may be silent and at rest, the mind will act as it does during dreaming. But above the mind, there is determination of the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul proper. If therefore the soul is directly engaged with the Supreme, if we're directly engaged with any kind of service, any kind of love, any kind of offering, naturally all other subordinates, namely the intelligence, mind, and senses, will automatically be engaged. So it's also termed the higher taste, right? So it means instead of us trying to be like, no, I'm not going to do all these things that we talked about earlier, like lust can be things that we do that we enjoy and that don't cause us harm, actually, like enjoying a delicious meal and we cooked it just for us. So we dovetail it, right? We cook a delicious meal, offer it to God, and now we're eating that meal, and it's prasadam, it's spiritualized food. But it can also, lust can mean like, so I guess that was the example where I say it doesn't hurt us. It doesn't hurt us that we're conscious of. But in cooking for only our senses, only ourselves, and then we enjoy it, there are karmic implications. Anybody who suffered to get that food to us, now it's not been utilized properly to give pleasure to God. So therefore we have that karmic implication because we did it just for us, right? So there's that, but that's more subtle. Not all of us can perceive that. But then there's things that are very obvious, very obvious. Like I'm watching TV for an hour, oh, and more, and 2 hours, oh, and 3 hours, oh, and 4 hours, and you feel horrible at the end. So like that's lust. Also, that's lust. It's what Arjuna spoke about. It's something that drives us forward as if by force. So it's the senses, like they want engagement. So here it's saying if we engage the soul in any kind of loving exchanges, then the intelligence, the mind, and the senses are engaged and therefore pacified. It's so much more easy to go that route than it is to go to restrain, like just stop, don't watch TV, don't eat something just for yourself, don't scroll on your phone for hours. These We're driven forward because the senses want engagement and they want enjoyment. And unless we are getting enjoyment internally, spiritually, they're not going to be subdued. Later, Prabhupada calls them like serpents. They just want more. They want something. They're going for it. But he says, and maybe I'll even just go to that part. He says, if by intelligence one engages one's mind in Krishna consciousness by complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically the mind becomes stronger. And even though the senses are very strong like serpents, they will be no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. So lust might still be there. The urge might still be there, but it will be powerless. It'll be like they'll have broken fangs because you'll be engaged in something higher. You'll be engaging your mind and senses in something that's feeding your soul and feeding your senses, both like simultaneously. So I'll just continue a little bit longer with the purport and we'll go to the next verse. If therefore the soul directly engaged with the Supreme, it naturally all others are subdued. They're naturally engaged. And I'm going to skip a little bit, if the mind is directly engaged in the service of the Lord constantly, which that's a big word, right? Constantly. But wherever we are, we can increase it. We can start where we are. Don't fake, like I'm just going to do it all the time. It's like wherever you are, and then how can you increase that? And that's the game. That's the goal, though, to constantly engaged. And that can be simple. Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple and complicated for the complicated. So it's to be constantly engaged. I like to think of it as rungs on a ladder. And that's the highest rung. And so then again, where am I? And how do I take the next step on the ladder? And sometimes when we look at the top rung of a ladder, there's an image that I've seen on the internet where you're standing at the bottom of a ladder and you're just looking up and you're only looking at the top rung. I'm like, you'll never get there. Because if that's the only thing that you're not willing to go to the next rung and the next one and the next one and the next one. So I like this idea of like wherever I am, increase it, increase it, increase it. And it can go as slow or as fast as you want, but being authentic so that it has longevity. So then there's no chance, if we're constantly engaged, there's no chances of the senses becoming engaged in other ways. The mental attitude has already been explained, and that's he's referring to some other purport. If the mind is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, or the offering of the Lord, or the love of the Lord, the giving to the Lord, there is no chance of it being engaged in the lower propensities. The Katha Upanishad has described the soul, the soul has been described as Mahan, the great. Therefore, the soul is above all, namely above the senses, the mind, the intelligence. It's the great. And that's who you really are. You're great. And if we identify with that great, our mind and our intelligence becomes powerful, powerful enough to not worry about the senses, actually, to be so clear about where you're going and what you're doing that the senses just follow along. And I love Prabhupada's ending words, so I'll wait for them. He says, therefore, directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the solution to the whole problem. With the intelligence, one has to seek out the constitutional position of the soul and then engage the mind always in Krishna consciousness. And that solves the whole problem. And then it talks about a neophyte spiritualist, like a new spiritual person, is generally advised to keep aloof from the senses, like to restrain the senses or not engage them, kind of omit them. One has to strengthen the mind by intelligence. And if by intelligence one engages one's mind in God consciousness or Krishna consciousness by surrender unto the Supreme, then automatically the mind becomes stronger. And that's when he refers to the fangs, the senses being like serpents with broken fangs. Even though the soul is the master of intelligence in the mind, the senses also still, unless it's strengthened by the association of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness, there's every chance of falling down due to the agitated mind. So it's normal for us to fall down unless we're in contact with Krishna all the time. So the more we can increase that, the easier it is to live a happy, peaceful, satisfied, inspired, supported life where you feel enriched. So I'll go to the next verse, Atul, if you want to go to verse 43. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind, and intelligence, one should control the lower self by the higher self, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer the insatiable enemy known as lust. So spiritual strength is our birthright. Spiritual strength is intrinsic to us, and it comes with automatic control of senses, mind, and intelligence. When we wake up our consciousness and we spend time in direct connection with Krishna, with God, and there's so many ways to do that. When we spend time in direct connection with those who are always in connection with God, we spend time with sadhus who know God more deeply than we do. Then we, through osmosis, we get some invigoration, inspiration, and mercy. We get realizations in that sangha. It's called sadhu sangha, right? So, and in that experience, we're enlivened, and everything else is taken care of. I love Prabhupada's word, the whole problem is solved. And then he does say in chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, it's conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor, the eternal lover of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's our true identity. And spiritual strength is our birthright because that's our identity. So when we know who we really are, we have everything we need. We have the strength, we have the inspiration, we have the knowledge, and it's a process. It's not black and white, but it's there for us, and we can access it and touch it any second of any day. And I'm just going to read a tiny bit more of Prabhupada's concluding purport of this chapter. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by the propensities for lust. It's natural, it's normal. And desire for dominating the resources of material nature, ruling over. Desire for overlording and sense gratification, like giving to the senses what they want. They are our greatest enemies of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, spiritual consciousness, consciousness of God and the soul and our relationship with God. That is Krishna consciousness. When you know Krishna, you know everything. Because you know Krishna, we're part of Krishna. So we know ourselves and we know our relationship. So in that Krishna consciousness, by strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses and the mind and the intelligence. One may not have to give up work. It's not, again, I love that Srila Prabhupada is always teaching us yukta vairagya. It's not like, oh, don't do it. It's like, do this. If you have a child, I have a child, and if I say, don't play in that muddy water that comes from some, maybe like a negative source, but you can be like, here, play in this sandbox. Right? Or don't eat that chocolate. Oh, well, here's a fruit leather, here's some mango. So if you treat yourself as your own child, and be kind and loving to yourself, be your own mother, be your own father, and you decide, I'm going to engage myself. I'm not going to just always say, don't do this and don't do this and don't do this and don't do this, because that is exhausting also, and it doesn't always last. It's needed, but if that's all we're doing, I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to watch TV, and I'm not going to scroll, and I'm not going to spend time with people who are just uselessly chit-chatting or gossiping, and I'm not going to, eat animals, and I'm not going to, it's exhausting. But if it's like, I am gonna eat, pakoras and samosas and gulab jamans, I am going to sing songs and create art for God and write a book, write a movie, write a kid's storybook, do something and have an outlet of creativity that's around our spiritual nature. It's around who we really are. I am gonna spend time with people who are on this path too, who are searching for their spiritual strength, that wanting to wake up their spiritual strength. I am gonna spend time with those people. Then the not doing is automatically there. By a higher taste, you automatically give up the lower taste. So I'll continue just a tiny bit more and then we'll conclude for today. So again, we don't have to give up our work. But by gradual development of Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and mind. Can you imagine? We can be in this world, but not of it. We cannot even be influenced. Srila Prabhupada said by gradual Krishna consciousness, waking up our consciousness, connecting to God, we won't even be influenced by the material world or the senses, the material senses, and the mind. We won't be influenced by the mind because the intelligence will be always where we're getting our knowledge from. So soul, intelligence, and then the mind will follow instead of us following our mind, because the mind comes up with so many things that are a misdirection based just on what's the mind been exposed to. So we use our intelligence and our consciousness to expose the mind to contact with Krishna conscious texts, Krishna conscious people. So here it says one can be situated in a transcendental position. Oh, I said that without it being influenced by material senses and mind, by steady intelligence directed towards one's pure identity. That is true. That is the depth of our goal, you know. We want to know, we want real ego. We don't want false ego. In the last chapter, the last verse, it talked about that because we have lust in our mind and in our intelligence, then we get material ego because we want to enjoy something. Then a fake sort of identity comes, a veil of illusion comes on us so that we can enjoy that experience. But if we instead contact with spiritual knowledge and spiritual people and spiritual texts and spiritual food and spiritual activities, then we get enlivened. And now that the lust is doesn't affect us, it doesn't influence us because we're enlivened already, we're satisfied already, we're satiated. And then from there, the mind and the intelligence and the senses, they're following that direction. By steady intelligence, we get to our pure identity. And in that pure identity, that's true freedom. When you know you're the soul, then when you die, you're in true freedom. You're not attached to your body at that moment. You know who you are, you know your relationship with God, and you're able to change your body. You're able to know, oh, this is just clothing. This is clothing I wore for 89 years, and now I'm letting it go, and I'm moving to another, maybe another body, or I'm going right to the spiritual world where I can be in a loving relationship with God all the time. And it's a sober person, one who knows their pure identity, that's not bewildered by the changing bodies. That's obviously, I'm quoting another verse earlier in the Bhagavad Gita. This is the sum total of this chapter. That's it. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, there's philosophical speculations, artificial attempts to control the senses by so-called practice of yogic postures, but they will never bring one to spiritual life, just the postures, just the control, just the engagement in controlling the senses. One must train in God consciousness by higher intelligence to ignite and wake up our spiritual consciousness, and then everything else follows. So thank you all for allowing me to immerse myself in this study so that I can get also spiritually enthused.
Thank you so much, Haripriya. Today has been very enlightening and it's a wonderful way to finish this chapter. And I think a key point in here is, as you mentioned, thinking of not about what not to do, but things to do. I
Mm,
also remember hearing a sadhu mentioning that how do you make sure that you don't fall into lust or do things that you're not supposed to do? And he mentioned, I'm busy. I'm busy all the time. I have so many things to do. I don't have even time to think about it.
mm,
So actually having a list of things like you mentioned every single day, like is God's birthday. Like, ooh, what am I going to do today for this? How am I going to make it special for God? Will be
mm,
a wonderful way to keep ourselves busy in something like you mentioned, seva, which is delightful. So at the same time, we feel joy while we are doing it, and we don't have the time to not think about it. So it will be interesting, perhaps doing an exercise to help each other as
mm,
devotees in the comments, perhaps, saying like, oh, I usually engage with Krishna in this way, or I do these activities that help me to focus my soul in doing this kind of seva. So everybody could learn a little bit about how others do that and try to implement themselves. That will be very interesting.
I love that.
Definitely, this
Everyone
is
watching in the future can comment. This is how I like
yes.
to connect, like even this morning I was offering incense and it didn't feel like an art of like, oh, I'm doing arty. Like, oh, no, it was like I was offering and I was like, this is so perfect. This is so beautiful. Like, I want to give Krishna nice smells. Like, of course, but yeah, but I would love that idea that people could write because I'm sure everyone has a different relationship. And
Hmm.
like, people, like I've mentioned, I've pulled tarot cards. Like, I ask God a question and I pull a tarot card. There's different, we're all individuals. And of course, we have the practice that's been given to us by the acharyas and the souls, spiritual souls. And how do we, engage in that and personalize it? Yeah, I love that. And actually, we have a comment by Colleen. Concentration on the Lord first thing in the morning, very helpful. Thank you, Colleen. Yes.
So thank you so much for being here, for sharing of this wisdom, and I invite everybody to join us again in our next session in Ashram Talks. Thank you everybody who was here live, and we'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.